I think I'm always trying to get everything to be done like games, even today. Morning, everyone. So today I'll be walking us through going to cloud. Now, this is normally a very straightforward topic. Whenever you have the previous panel come to you, and then they do it for you. All right. So, sorry, this is off. I believe cloud migration is a non-terminal activity. It doesn't end. So we'll look at that later on a bit further. All right, so why do we need cloud? I think the panel has discussed that. It's no longer important anymore. I think we all understand those benefits quite clearly. So when it comes to the how many of you follow this design? Okay, you're not seeing my slides, all right. Anyway, yes. How many of you follow that pattern? You look at the requirements, you come up with the design, do the implementation, and then the verification. Then Saturday night, you switch off your on-prem, you do your data migration, you're fully cloud. How many of us have followed this approach? It's a fairly simple approach. Well, I'm glad no one has followed it. It's a bit of a waterfall approach, and it does have its disadvantages. Okay. All right. So when we come to moving to cloud, the three main things you look at is the architecture, the design, and the implementation. And this is just a sample of how we normally look at it. A lot of focus is on the implementation. How do we get it right? A large portion of it comes down to the design. The architecture we leave to our cloud service providers to help us with that particular task. Does this feel familiar? Guys, does it feel familiar? Yeah, it works. It's worked before. I don't think it's the most successful method. I like to invert this diagram and then have this architecture at the top, taking up the largest bit of it, design taking a very small portion, and finally implementation. Now, just going to quote someone here who says, big designs upfront are dumb, and doing no design upfront is even dumber. We spend a lot of time on the requirements stage and the design stage that we end up just trying to figure out how to pick up our bare metal servers and ship them to the cloud. We don't really take into account what these changes mean to certain processes within the organization, what it means to the organization itself, even to its culture. If you've not had a culture change since you've moved to cloud, you spun off a room. So I have a room at home, for example, where I've put up all these monitors, I've put wallpaper, LED lights so that I can enjoy myself when I play video games. When I leave that room, I tend to be a bit more of a serious person. So your cloud is something similar to that. It's just somewhere you go and play around and then come back to the real business. Essentially, that transformation when you move to cloud should have been a business-wide or an organization-wide change. Why architecture is at the top, taking the most of it. I do know we'll hear a lot more about serverless and how you won't need to worry about that. Architecture sits at the top because this is not just the architecture on cloud, this is also your software architecture. Your software will not move to cloud as is. There's a lot of it that has to change. You may have built it in one language, you may need to change the language. It may be a monolith, you may need now to build it into microservices. Is it going to be event-driven? It's out of considerations to change around the architecture of the software. Design, this is an ongoing process. So this, essentially, if you look at it, if it was this stage, you would have a section of design here, a lot of implementation, design, another small portion there, a lot of implementation, design. The design phase carries throughout because changes are bound to happen. Implementation is less space because you're going to cloud. There's a lot of automation there. If you're not doing a lot of automation on cloud, you're failing on cloud. And in fact, you're taking your costs up for those who are worried about cost. So like I said, if you finished your cloud migration, something's gone wrong. Cloud is built for agile, it's not built for waterfall. That's not a video game, unfortunately. But we're getting to the part where we have the video games. So how do you migrate to cloud? How do you do it in the right way? There is the technology that needs to change. There's the business that may need to change. There's the software that needs to change, and there's, of course, there's the culture. Now, in Agile, we have MVPs, and I'm sure when you design your softwares, you've all done MVPs, where you roll out a minimum viable product, test it, get feedback, improve on it, and you continue this cycle until you have your finished product. That's a good way of doing it. In migration to cloud, there's something called minimum viable migrations. Now this, you do migration in tiny pieces. So you'd be running something hybrid, and at some point you'd then change it up. Now when it comes to minimum viable migrations, when you're scoping for this, these are the key things you look at. One, it has to take less than 8 weeks. You can't spend 2 years preparing to move to cloud, and then one Saturday night, you do a big bang change. It's a very poor method. It should relate to one bounded context. This is previously when I mentioned event-driven. So this is where your software architecture changes. If you're planning to move, you now look at your software, look at it as an event-driven software, and then pick certain events to move those to cloud. Others stay on-prem, and they continue iterating that process. So I don't mean your cloud journey will take 8 weeks, but you have 8-week sections where you run sort of like sprints. Should have known dependencies and risks. As poor as we are at risk management, as we've learned today, still need to have that visibility of what your risks are. You should have known return on investment. Now this is where, what's the return on investment? The return on investment may be your saving cost. The return on investment could be on customer experience. It could be on efficiency. It could be throughput. That has to be noted. It should be injectable. Now, injectable in this case is part of the event-driven design, where what do we take out of our on-prem and inject into the cloud? And there are two types of injections. So we have horizontal and vertical injections. But that's how it's done. Then there's something called immersive agile. Now, immersive agile is a recent term that I personally have coined along with one other person, and we are working on this as Agile 2.0 after the Agile Manifesto of 2001. So this immersive agile has a few things on customer experience, and then has a few things that I love in gaming. One of the first key things I've put there is immersive agile has vertical slices. How many of you love MVPs? How many have used MVPs? I have. And then I learned a few years back, MVPs have problems. What's the problem with an MVP? If you get stuck at MVP 3, do you move to MVP 4? You have to fix MVP 3 first. And that essentially is not agile. You seem to have gone back to a waterfall format. Vertical slices are something in game development where game studios build everything, a single piece of everything that's required. So a game would be built as a demo, maybe a 30-minute section of the game, which has all the components required top to bottom. Previously with MVPs, if it was for banking, you'll say, let's put everything minus multi-currency transfers. We'll put in that later. Or we'll skip this, we'll put that later. We won't have single sign, we won't have to FA now, we'll do 2FA later. With a vertical slice, you say, what do we need? What, along that cake, you can imagine a cake, lasagna is better with all those layers. So when you cut through it, you get to see all the different layers. You don't implement one layer alone, you implement across all of them. That way you're actually able to test a more market-ready product and get faster feedback. Yeah. So when it comes to minimum viable migration, this is the matrix that you measure it against, your priority matrix. In this case, I've done a sample for banking. I've worked with banks, so a bit of bias there. So for example, here you want to move the card pin reset. Now this is an event, of course, when someone wants to reset their pin on their mobile banking app on internet banking. So the domain payments, I hope that's correct. In this case, it's a vertical injection, and then the feature is focused on cards. What's the scope limitation? This bank is only doing this for its Kenya-based customers. So the other customers would stay their communication whenever they do this would go to their on-prem, but for these others it would go to the cloud. Then what are we looking at as the dependencies? Either the MasterCard or Visa integration layers. And then we have, of course, another example for Swift. Now what this allows you to do is that now that you have this key matrix, you can then now be able to pick pieces of what needs to go to cloud, when, how. Of course, you're still maintaining some communication between the two layers, which is your on-prem and the cloud. Is that point? Yes. Okay. So what I want you to picture from this is you have your state here where you've started your on-prem. It has 10 items in it. As your on-prem progresses towards cloud, there's a communication channel, of course, that's helping with data transfer, the management, and all of that. The 10 items become 9, the 9 items become 8 as you progress. But down here, it's going 1, they become 2, they become 3. So your migration is phased out, and at some point then, you're able to shut down and move on. So what does that event-driven change, of course, then stops there are 4 types of cloud migrations, and why the event-driven design is important is because we take our monolith, we put it on the cloud, it becomes distributed. We take some time, then we shift it, it becomes a modular monolith. Then we take a couple more years, and then we turn it into microservices. And then after that, we see it, and we're like, we're tired of managing the server instances on the cloud. We then move to serverless. And then we hope that Amazon or Microsoft was now at serverless, and we fear vendor lock-in. We hope that case never happens. During this migration period, which could be 10, 20 years for your organization with budget constraints, bloated budgets, teams going in and out, chances of failure are high, and once you do get to cloud, you'll always have technical debt. All organizations have technical debt, but there's nothing as annoying as bloating your technical debt, especially once you're on cloud, because it's harder to clean it up there than on-prem. So let me see if this will make sense. Let me show you. Okay, sorry. I didn't have that slide. Yeah. I don't know if this will be visible, if it's zoomed in on. Where should I look? All right. Yeah. So you have your monolith here. This is how you start your cloud journey. Well, basically, this is how you are with your bare metal servers. This is the modality that you have of your systems, and these are the number of deployable units. When we move to cloud by just picking and dumping, we remain with one large deployable unit that is very difficult to maintain. When we move to a modular monolith, we have technical debt. We are creating technical debt. Ideally, the goal is to get to serverless. So this route, then this route, then this route, of course, doesn't work. The shortest path is always the best. And after microservices, those who are bold enough move to serverless. Okay. So I had mentioned earlier, your cloud migration is not just a technology thing. If your business did not change in some way during your migration, you've ended up with this problem where you're all stuck trying to figure out what's broken. I hope this image does make sense. The car is fine in actual sense. It doesn't have a flat, nothing's wrong with it. But no one knows what's not wrong with it or what's wrong with it, so we're stuck there. So what does this mean? How do you get your organization technology team to stop being a versus situation? So cloud migration is supposed to be an organization-wide change. So one, you look at what processes within either your operations, your sales, customer service are being impacted by this change, especially if you're picking an event-driven migration through the MVM. So quickly, people and cloud. For those financial institutions have done this quite a lot when they spin out their fintech arms and bodies to build apps and solutions. Also integrate with other third parties, your business analysts, product owners, project managers, scrum masters. That first, what are these two roles left doing? If their job is to delegate work to police, tell people to join a stand-up, there's no change. You don't have a scrum team. You've not built any team. Cloud organizations, in my belief, need to practice immersive agile. If you're a cloud organization, you are a technology company that offers X business services. You're no longer a business that's leveraging technology to achieve X outcomes. So on the people front, I'd like to introduce you to something 0, 1, 2, 3. How do you build your teams for your cloud migration? 0 means none, you have no knowledge. 1 means you can read, meaning you have some grasp of this knowledge. 2, you can read and write, meaning you're able to execute that knowledge. 3, you're able to teach that knowledge. So what you do with your teams that are going to be involved in moving to cloud, because essentially once you move to cloud, I don't think your IT team is going to be the same. You'll have Scrum teams, you'll have deployment teams, you'll have your DevOps, you'll have all your new ops, FinOps, DevSecOps, Sales Ops, CEO Ops, all those guys. Everyone will be an ops somewhere. So now what does this mean? So this means this is something which should be publicly known to your entire team and that everybody can look at. So due to data protection issues, I can't use anyone's names. So feel free to consider yourself Dev 1, 2, or 3. And what you do is you rate yourself where you think you stand between 0 to 3, and then your peers give you your rating, and then you give your aspiration. And this is given for every event or every change or anything within your pipeline for deployment within the Scrum team. And because anyway, the same thing is how you should. When I say the Scrum team, I'm not just referring to the software architecture, also to your cloud deployment or your migration to cloud. So now you're able to tell which people present. So clearly, Dev number 3, if he's left alone in the team, it's going to be an issue. So then you find out how to balance and to create these teams across whether you have 90 people, 2,000 people, or just 10 people. This is a good enough graph for this. I made these slides in a hurry. I didn't want to use slides. That's why I have that piece of paper there, unfortunately. But I'm also seeing that I'm being told I'm out of time. So there's supposed to be a big screen there for Q&A. So I hope I didn't run through it too fast. I'll take 2 questions as I sum up in the interest of time. Is that okay? One question. All right. Let me sum up. Why immersive agile? Why your cloud migration should be treated like any of your agile deployments once you go to cloud? Of course, I've mentioned everything, or the panel has mentioned everything to do with cost, security, load shedding, all those sweet benefits of cloud. But this migration is not just a migration of cloud; it's a migration of mindset, a migration of business. If you let me give a very final good example. Game studios do one thing: they build games. Everybody in that game studio knows that they build games. Everybody knows their role into building games. How many of you in your businesses do you all share a common goal? Other than your about us page where you put the values and your mission. There is no common goal or identity driving you to that final stage. And that's why the immersive agile aspect of it brings it to allow you to have continuous delivery on your cloud platform once you're on cloud. And also ensures that your migration to cloud is not expensive, one, and you're not digging yourself into technical debt, which could take you years. So technical debt, how it works is you may have one problem, but it may take you 10 weeks to solve. I once had technical debt on error messages that were hard-coded. I think that was a 6-month project for 80 error messages. It's grueling. It was all just because someone had coded something. So you can see how technical debt can bloat and actually take you away from your deployment.